Well, good afternoon. This afternoon I'm with Dr. Miculka, and I know your summer has been a very interesting summer, has it not?
It's been very interesting.
And I guess I purposely scheduled you at the end of the 3 series. We visited with Dr. Woods about academics. We visited with Stan about athletics. Today, we're going to talk about fine arts and how that's going to be changing in the light of COVID. One of the reasons that I kept this interview to the last is because fine arts students, whether they're singing, acting on a stage, playing music, there is wind and things that are being exchanged. So I'm sure that that's on the forefront of everybody's mind. What is this year going to look like? Is there an easy way to kind of sum up what this year is going to look like?
I don't think there's a way to begin to project what it's going to look like. Everything that we've done during the summer, everything that we're doing now, we've planned in a live format, we've planned it in a blended format, and in a virtual format. And literally, our game plan changes every day. The classroom's going to look different. How we work with our kids in an ensemble setting is going to be different. Right now, we just want to get school started and have our students safe, and we want them to have a meaningful fine arts experience. And what a marching season would look like, we started talking about that in April and May. UIL has not made any changes in what they're making available, but we have to make decisions based on when we can see kids in a safe environment, and that will drive what the fall season looks like in terms of a marching band. So we're going to work hard to have a good experience. We want to be there to support our football season, if we have a football season, with a different kind of crowd, a different kind of setup. So having any kind of marching events or assessments, that's still down the line. It could happen, and if it does happen, it might happen in a different format, but we're always going to err on the side of students being safe first.
Well, let's touch on a couple of things right up front. We know that as it stands now, today, this moment, Northside students and Northeast students, and the reason I throw Northeast in there is because Brandeis and Clark are competing in that district. They're out of the classroom until September 8th. September 8th would be the first time that the district could return to an live, in-person type setting. However, I also understand complicating that is we have the traffic light system of red, yellow, and green. And that traffic light system will dictate how many students, what group of students can come onto campus, and it would not be until we hit the green light that you can contemplate bringing large groups of students back to in-live education. So with that being said, and I like the fact that you touched on, we'll deal with band first, because that's on everybody's mind, because as it stands now, September 24th will be a scrimmage weekend for Northside football. And then the following weekend would be the first games. I'm assuming that no band program will march with all band students. If I remember correctly, I think UIL has put a limit of 80 to 100 as far as participation, I guess, on the field in that. Does Northside have a policy in place?
We haven't reached a definitive number. UIL is really adjusting their numbers depending upon what the needs of local school districts are going to say is reasonable to put out there. We have plans to have, right now, our spirit groups in the stands, our bands will be about 83 to 85 students, and the spirit groups would be about 81 students. That's what we have in those 2 sections in the stands, with students sitting at the proper 6-foot aerosol distance. And then we'll have other aerosol preventatives for the instruments themselves and the like. So we've really covered all those issues. What we still have open to our discussion is the fact that we may only have 83 students in the band for the halftime, or for the spirit part of that in the stadium, but we want to connect all the students that want to be at a football game as an extracurricular. So students that are in the virtual format, taking classes from home, are eligible to come and participate in co-curricular and extracurricular activities. As long as we can provide that teacher-student ratio correct after school, and being outside, that's much easier to do than inside. It's very possible that we'll have a spirit band during the football game, and at halftime we'll have the second wave of a band come in for the halftime and then return home. And see, that's an option that we have on the table. It's not been confirmed, but those are the different, that gives you an example of the different ways that we're trying to think about how to connect our kids and more of our kids in a safe environment.
And I was going to ask, is another option on the table maybe that Johnny marches the first game, sits out the second, comes into the third, and Susie sits out the first but marches in the second, so that all band members get to participate in the highlight shows of Friday nights or Saturday nights in Texas. But we're also at a very unique position too this year, because this is the 6A year for state marching band. I hate to say this, but if it had been a 5A year, it might have taken a little pressure off from the district standpoint, because 6A couldn't advance to state, but this is their year to advance to state. And I know the silver lining is all Northside schools are in 6A this year. So you don't have to worry about a 5A year and a 6A year. They're all in the same. Frustrating that a little bit though is you have two schools that are in another little district over there. So you have that going on. But do you foresee Northside participating in the state marching band contest?
Our conversations up to this point have been that at this point that's not feasible.
Okay.
In other words, we could make it feasible, but it would risk the safety of our kids, and the safety is going to come first. So as a district right now, that is not anything that's on our table, because of the fact that we're starting our marching season so much later. And there is a physical conditioning piece to that. Plus, there had to be a commitment by the directors several weeks and months ago regarding their show design and their investment in their music if they're going to pursue that. And it's too risky with all the unknowns in early summer, so most of them had to make the decision, we're going to table that show for a competitive season, and if we go to UIO, we'll do something that's a little bit more a la collegiate oriented. Maybe that's a good thing, to go back to the 60s and 70s and to have something a little bit more local, entertaining, and reasonable for UIO, but something that fits where we are with what we can put on the field now.
Well, and I think you're hitting on, and I'm not trying to cast shade on anybody, but you're hitting on a very important component. If you're outside of Bexar County, those schools, I know Bandera started two-a-day marching season 3 weeks ago in person. I know Bernie started marching band competition. Comal has already started having their band kids, we know. How does, from an adjudicator standpoint, how does competition there, how do you level the field? Because obviously Northeast kids, Northside kids, SAISD kids, they can't be out two-a-days right now. They're not ever going to get to see two-a-days this year, which is different than in years past, because when they can go back into having activities and seeing everybody, it's September 7th. They will have already been in school for 2 weeks. How does this look?
Well, number one, we don't worry about leveling the field.
Okay.
The first thing we're going to think about is what's best for Northside students. So we're going to make a decision that is it's going to afford a good quality program for our students. And as you referenced earlier, we're going to rotate our students in and out so that they all have a meaningful marching experience based on what is available. And we're going to make sure that we provide that for them. And then we're going to have some kind of assessment down the line if it's possible. But we're going to just take care of what is best for all of our schools and keep it within a framework so that all of them are operating within that. I would like to say, and I know for sure that our teachers teach our students process rather than product. As much as we like to compete, it's more important that when our students leave high school, they are lifelong consumers of the arts. which means that it's deeper than just a marching contest or just a given moment in their musical journey or their artistic journey. It's for life. So we need to do it in a way that it doesn't scar that or burn it, but that it's something that's positive forever. And so we can draw some good experiences from all of this and still have some very meaningful opportunities for our students.
Stepping off the field but staying in the music world, Dr. Miculka, what do concerts look like this year? Or will there be such an animal as concerts?
Excuse me. We've had that conversation too. Right now, we feel like because our classroom instruction is going to be more in a master class setting, in small ensemble setting, that the concert season might not occur until maybe mid-year, maybe at the end of the first semester. We can do some virtual concerts. We've now gotten some different kinds of equipment to rehearse with so that kids can rehearse without the sound delay on their computers, which is going to be tremendous. So we're going to have it in small group settings, but right now concerts and art galleries, dance recitals, our winter spectaculars, those music theater productions, those are all just on hold depending upon where we are at the end of the first 6 weeks, at the end of the second 6 weeks, etc.
As a parent, having kids come into the music room, and we're going to deal with band first before we go elsewhere, but typically when you signed up for band, there would be 150 kids inside the room. They're all getting their instruments out, they're all playing, and a band hall is only as large as a band hall can be, so they're sitting kind of close. How is that going to change teaching and instruction? I'm assuming everybody's going to be kept at 6 feet apart. Social distancing is going to be maintained. Is there some health concerns that parents have to worry about with kids playing their instruments, being surrounded by other kids?
Let me start by saying that the greatest music institutions in the United States, Music for All, TMEA, all of our great national endowments, they all came together and they put their stock into a research project at the University of Colorado and Colorado State. And they brought in some tremendous laboratory researchers in instrumental music from the University of Maryland. They spent all summer developing 2 research projects that studied aerosols specific to this COVID-19 crisis. So they tested instruments, they tested vocals, they tested the airflow in rooms, all of those items. So they gave us some tremendous recommendations for what different instruments were doing. So from that, now we were able to take a look at what kind of bell covers we need, the filtered bell covers for instruments, the different kinds of bags that you put clarinets in, the different kinds of plastic shields that go over a flute mouthpiece. All of those items, the different kind of masks that have the slit in them for mouthpieces. So we're looking at all those items, the different kind of shelves that we need around podiums where vocal teachers are teaching, where theatrical folks are teaching from, because the voice and the theatrical pieces were the last two pieces that needed some more aerosol research on. So we've used all of that to design our rooms. Our kids are at 6 foot spacing. Students are going to have to learn new protocols when they come into a classroom. They have to get used to being 6 feet apart. And quite honestly, when they're in the environments where they're doing that for a while, they get accustomed to it quite well. They're going to have to come into a room. You're right, a big band hall that might normally house 300-piece marching band when we're rehearsing now might have 25 students in it. And they'll be at 6 foot spacings, and the teachers will still interact. We'll have a live setting, but we'll also have the virtual applications for kids that are enrolled in the same class that might be experiencing that class live, or they might have it recorded and be looking at it later in the day, depending upon what their other schedule looks like. In the arts, there's a human desire to perform together. That's the piece that's most critical with COVID-19, is that you can do so much online for so long, but when you're a performing artist, you got to share it, and not just on a computer screen. You've got to experience it live. And that's a piece that we really have to work to get our kids back to doing again, because even in our TEKs, we have TEKs that are skills that are designed for the individual to learn, but we also have TEKs that can only be learned in the ensemble setting. And we're missing that piece. So there's a void there. So we have to work in small master class settings. We have the greatest music arrangers and theatrical script writers. They're all rearranging great works of art so that different kinds of ensembles and acting troupes can perform those great works.
So let's move from music to dance.
Okay.
And when I say move from music, I'm talking about band, but let's move into dance. A lot of, yes, you can have effective solos, moving solos, and they can lead, but a lot of the dance, it is groups. That's the whole purpose of it, the whole foundation. How has COVID-19 changed the way dance is going to be taught for 2019? Or excuse me, 2020.
2020. Well, the classroom hasn't changed. In other words, you still have equipment in the room that has to be touched. So in dance, as well as some of the other fine arts disciplines, you have to think about what equipment can you afford to not have in the room. But dancers still have to have that 6 foot space, and because there's more movement if you choreograph that way, or if it's a higher level dance group, then simply you have to put fewer students in that room. You know, if they can find a place outside the dance studio that allows them to spread out, then you can still cover a more complex dance skills and movement and production pieces and be able to get them done. Otherwise, we have to adjust the curriculum to fit the space that we have.
There is still going to be opportunities for dancers to perform.
We're not going to forfeit any concert opportunity, any recital opportunity. Our students are still going to be engaged in developing the skills on their instrument, in their dance, in their acting, in their art, whatever it is. We're not compromising that at all. We just have to change the format. What we teach doesn't change. How we teach it changes.
So let's move into the music vocal classroom. Choir. Here we are singing out. I'm assuming that face mask, although very needed at times, could prevent or affect the tonal quality, the notes. Will choir students be performing in mask, without mask? And what other changes can we see in the choir room?
Our students are going to perform with masks. Again, we're going to err on the side of safety first. You can always change and loosen that criterion later. But if you have a sickness, then it's too late. So we're going to start with masks, probably going to start with shields too. When you mentioned that about you can't see the vocal positioning of the mouth, the oral cavity, we had an issue already in the summer with a student that had a hearing impairment and needed to see and read the lips of the teacher. So we already have some masks that have the clear covers to them so that they can actually see that modeling and be able to read lips. So we're looking at all those different PPE opportunities that we have that we can get in the hands of students and teachers so that instruction and learning can continue. So that's the vocal piece is a real challenge. But at this point, we're going to sing with masks on. We're going to be at the proper spacing. We've removed all of the risers out of the choir rooms that are not built in. We've removed all the furniture that's not necessary so we can maximize the amount of space that we have in there. Our teachers will be around a different kind of plexi teaching, what we call a teaching station that is higher and taller, so that as they're modeling and singing in a full voice, that those aerosols are not an issue for the other students in the room. So we're not backing off from that.
Okay. Stepping into the auditorium, the stage, I know Broadway made the announcement that they were suspending all activities until at least through the end of this year, 2020. What will theater look like? Because a lot of the masterful moving pieces, it hinges on that interaction between people and being able to see the body language and the facial expressions and getting caught up in the tenseness of the moment. Will theater move more towards solo performances, one-man shows, one student shows. How is this going to change?
You know, theater, big productions will be just like bands. In other words, we're going to leave the big arena and we're going to come back into something smaller. So we'll move away from the big stage and think more in terms of production pieces that fit the black box theater, the small theater. It will be more duet, small ensemble pieces, more solo development. It's again, if anything they did in a big form would have to be at a 6-foot spacing. So it's awfully hard to do a meaningful theater production if we're always 6 feet apart from each other when it calls for a hand-to-hand combat scene. So there again, teachers have to make choices, and that right now is not as critical as keeping our kids safe. But there's a lot of great theater instruction and production that can go on in the smaller pieces. You know, at the end of the day, we may not have the ensembles to show off because that piece isn't available, but our students are still going to develop their skills to a high individual solo level, and that's important to remember.
And even if this is their senior year and they're going to college next year, or they're freshmen and developing, it sounds like the benefit that I'm hearing and the true silver lining out of all of this, and maybe the benefit of COVID, they're going to get so much individual instruction and strength that when we're able to bring them back into that ensemble setting, they will have mastered so much of the skills and laid that foundation that they should be even more powerful performers and actors, singers, band students than they were before COVID-19.
That's what we're projecting. Absolutely, you were spot on.
Okay. So, Dr. Miculka, let's talk about testing requirements or protocols, especially if I'm participating in a small ensemble. I'm assuming, and I've tried to stress this with Dr. Woods and with Stan Lang, the responsibility is going to be on the student and the parent. If I'm not feeling well, if something is going a little wrong in my universe, I need to stay home.
That's imperative, absolutely. You know, we're still on the honor system, and I think that we've all been around it long enough to feel a responsibility to everybody else around us. And I know the folks in this building, we're very cognizant about what those protocols are, and I think our students and our parents are going to embrace that as well. We have a fine arts framework that really outlines everything that's unique to the arts education. It starts with that COVID checklist, and that we use a QR code here to do our protocol, our thermometer checks. But if I go to some other campuses, they give me the thermometer reading on the forehead. So it may vary from campus to campus for a while, but everybody is going to have to take some ownership over that. Absolutely.
So looking at painting, sculptures, do they escape a little bit here because a lot of that is more individualized and...
Wow, that's a great way to phrase it. Do they escape? The answer is no. In art, of all of the disciplines that we involve our students in, they have more manipulatives, and they would be transferring and sharing tools and crayons and charcoals and paintbrushes. So we've had to spend a whole lot more time just trying to develop the basic art kits, what those supplies are going to be that all kids that are taking art are going to have at home to do the curriculum. And then what are those pieces of equipment that are unique to our AP art students that they use only in the art labs, and we have to get those items to the students at home. You know, so we're in all the visual and performing arts, we're working to make sure that students do not share materials. Instruments are one instrument to one student. Art kits, or whatever your art supplies are, that's what a student uses. That eliminates any risk of any sanitation processes not being 100% foolproof. So they don't escape it at all. You know, it's just a different beast. They're more used to working solo, working as an individual in a math lab or a science lab. But in terms of the manipulatives, they still have to have those materials.
But if my student is at home and the curriculum calls for them to create a sculpture, how do I get that to someone with a kiln to fire it and set it? Or do we take a virtual picture of the kind of unfinished product and that's how it's graded, or how does that work?
We haven't gone all the way to what the extent's going to be in ceramics. You mentioned the one medium in art that we've not mastered yet, and that is ceramics. And that's the one piece that if the students don't have the clays, we can bring it up to the point where it's ready for firing. Maybe put some of the prints of it in application onto the computer so they can see what it would look like, but we can't go any further until we fire it. If we're at that point where we've moved through the health codes where we can have more kids on campus, then we'll find a way to get that piece into the kiln and fire it. See, so we're already thinking ahead of what are our options. Always, what are our options? What's another resource we can bring to the table? So we're not letting up.
It has to be frustrating from an educator standpoint when the table keeps shifting. It's not a solid, I know this is going to be an oak table, it's not moving, we know this is what's going to happen, but it seems like tables have turned into water beds. They're constantly moving up and down. How does the district and the parents navigate those challenges? That's
the frustrating part, because people like to plan nowadays. I mean, your calendars, your vacation calendars. Our teachers they map out their whole first semester already before summer starts, and so we've had to reprogram their mind that that's an item we're going to address, but we're not there yet. And for a while, they figured, or they thought that maybe we were just pushing them aside, but now they're realizing they really aren't there because other variables are going to change first that will affect that plan. So quite honestly, you learn to laugh every day. You learn to share with each other. You find a partner and you vent, and then you chuckle about it and you say, hey, together we can overcome this, and you just keep on going. It's a reprogramming your mindset. It doesn't mean that we care less. If anything, we care more. But we have to keep our mental stability and focus so that we can truly address each issue as it hits us. And it changes hourly in some cases.
Athletics is somewhat, they have it easier in that you can live stream those events, and that's acceptable. Fine arts is a different world and a different mindset because there's copyright issues. There's restrictions on how do we broadcast, or can we broadcast, can we take photos, can we send out. How has COVID changed that, or has it?
I think you're going to see some copyright guidelines shift from various publishers, various license holders, because they realize that if their work's not performed, they don't have an income. We know that our great composers and theatrical scriptwriters have all gathered and have been gathering around the world for the last 5 months saying we have to rewrite our great works so that small groups can play these, because if they don't play them, we don't eat. So there are some changes, and those people that own and have composed those pieces, they're the people talking to the license holder saying, we're going to change this. So there are some adjustments that will be made, depending upon how long we're going to be in this same kind of scenario.
So do you foresee the ability to live stream some of the theatrical performances from the black box? Because obviously the 50% occupancy hasn't changed for fine arts versus athletics. And so if my black box theater can hold 75 people, that's now been shut down to 37 people. And by the time you put the actors on stage and the crew to help make it, that audience is getting smaller and smaller. So to keep parents, family members, friends, supporters involved into that program, do you see more of those live stream opportunities to keep people connected, to keep them there? Also allow those that are studying virtually to watch their classmates perform their craft and be a part of it?
Absolutely, because the virtual connection piece from the students' end will already be there with just their fact that they're connected to that course of study and with flipped classrooms. So we're just going to expand that to the audience itself. But even if we have to reduce the audience size in order to have that live experience and just do more nights of a show in order to have more people enjoy it and connect to it, we're ready to do that too.
Dr. Miculka, has the district made a call on Los Leones and the Northside Arts Festival? I know that that's going to be 2021, so we're talking March, this spring.
No, we haven't. In other words, we're leaving that open because, quite honestly, by the end of the first semester, there might be a good participation of live involvement on our campuses, and so any part of a live involvement that can support those initiatives, then we'll start with where we left off and we'll grow it again from there. But to just cancel it for a year in advance, that's not how Northside operates. We're gonna leave that on the table. It's pending.
Okay. So in wrapping up, what is the one piece of advice or one moment of wisdom you can provide for parents, students to ease their fears or concerns about the 2021 school year?
That's a great question. First thing I'd say to the parents is we're going to take care of making sure that your child is safe. Secondly, I think they need to have faith in our resources in our district. I think that we have a lot of seasoned minds coming together with youthful energy and visionary thinkers, and our district has historically been very calculating over the decades. We're very methodical. We don't make a knee-jerk reaction to any kind of situation, and we've weathered some huge storms before. Never one of this kind of nature, but I think parents need to have faith. They need to just be patient, because this is a slow process, and we're going to always err on what's best for our students to have a meaningful experience in whatever they're participating in.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
Hope
very
that
much.
helps you.
It does.
Yeah.